I'm going to be transparent with you guys. I do not think that I'm going to read this stack of books that I'm going to talk to you guys about, but I'm very hopeful that I can get to at least some of them because I am very enthusiastic about atmospheric reads right now. On September 1st, the temperature dropped in the UK, and since then it's been overcast. We've had a chill in the air, we've had a couple of thunderstorms, and I am so ready to wrap myself up in a burrito and read some spooky, atmospheric, gothic books. So much so that I'm really excited to talk to you guys about these today. I will admit, some of these have been on past autumn/fall TBRs, and that is because I never ever get to all of them, but I don't even make seasonal TBRs usually, and that is because I don't really read seasonally except in autumn and winter. I just feel like the atmosphere, the temperature, the weather just lends itself so well to reading in the bare months, and then going into winter I do tend to like to read a lot more fantasy, but then spring and summer anything goes, you know, I'm not too fussed. There are a couple of books that I know have made an appearance on at least one autumn TBR in the past, and I'm hoping that this is the year that I can finally get to them. So I have 10 books that I'm talking about today in total. I do have quite a wide range of genres though, which is really interesting, but we're just going to get straight into it because I'm not going to be presenting these in any particular order to you guys. I really just want to yap about all of the books that I wish I was reading right now instead of working my way through my predetermined TBR. But the first one, before I forget about it, is the only one that I don't own. It's currently on its way to me, and that is Human Rights by Juno Dawson. Now, I recently did a 5-star audit on my channel where I talked about lots of little niches that I tend to really enjoy, and one of those is, it's typically young adult books, but this is like the one example of an adult book that fits this vibe that I can think of. Contemporary books set in our real world that have a witchy element to them that falls more into the category of the occult than fantasy. So I'm not talking about like sorcerers, I'm talking more about traditional witchcraft or demon summoning kind of magic, as opposed to like she made snowflakes out of the air kind of magic, you know? And this series definitely fits into that in the adult demographic. This is the final book, I think it's just a trilogy in the Her Majesty's Royal Coven series, which is following a coven of witches, or should I say they used to be a coven. They were each other's first covens when they were children, but now they've grown up, and in the in-between times there has been a war between the witches and the warlocks. This has given them all their own personal trauma and also sent them into very different places in their lives. However, they do still have this childhood bond that brings them back together again and again. One of these women is the High Priestess of Her Majesty's Royal Coven, which is like the UK's official governing body of magic, and she gets in contact with her childhood friend and asks her to rehabilitate this child that they found, because there is a prophecy that the sullied child will summon the demon that brings about the end of days. So Helena, I think is the priestess, wants her childhood friend Neve to stop this from happening by taking this child in, because they're very closed off, they won't communicate, and they're full of anger. So I love this for the witchy occult vibes. This is also a very diverse fantasy, which I love. I love all of the representation in here, and it is also a clapback at fantasy stories that exclude marginalized communities, which I also really love. Every single book in this series ends on such a massive cliffhanger that it has been so hard for me to wait for book 3, especially because Juno Dawson published a novella in this series instead of book 3 last year, and then I've also had to wait an extra few months because I have the very loot editions of this series. So I'm so excited for this to be in my hands, and I'm hoping that I can get it onto my TBR, probably not in September, but hopefully I'll get to it in October. One that has definitely made an appearance on at least one, if not more, of these TBRs is the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. Grady Hendrix is my favorite horror author, but do take that with a pinch of salt because I do not read a lot of horror. I think Grady Hendrix may actually be the only horror author that I've read more than one book from, and I have read his greatest hits. I've read Horror Store and I've read My Best Friend's Exorcism. I love his unique concepts. I do also have How to Sell a Haunted House, which I haven't heard the best things about, but the reason why the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires is on here, even though I think tonally it's going to be very different from the books I enjoy by Grady Hendrix, is because I've had this one the longest, so I really need to get to it, and that's why it keeps making its way onto these TBRs, and then also because I don't read a lot of horror, I don't own a lot of horror. So because I feel like Autumnal TBR should include a bit of horror, that's also how Grady Hendrix always ends up here. So from what I remember, this one is about a book club. It's about a woman who is not having a great time in life right now. I think she's become very tired of her life and her husband and her kids, and the only joy that she has in life is this book club. Now, somebody who I think is in the book club is attacked, and the person who attacked them's nephew comes into town and starts ingratiating himself in the community, and I think that this guy is a vampire, and the book club kind of like band together to try and get rid of the vampire. I do believe that this book is actually mainly a critique on racism, I think especially within small town America, and the way those kind of communities can harbor racism, which is why I think it is very, very different from the books that I've read from Grady Hendrix before. And I know a lot of people haven't enjoyed it because of that, but I think going into it expecting a little bit of I'm expecting a slower pace from it. I don't know if it does have a slower pace, but in the Grady Hendrix books that I've read, things escalate quite quickly, and I'm expecting this one to be more of a slow burn, I feel. It is not often that I want to read a classic, but I'm so desperate to pick up Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte right now. Wuthering Heights is my favorite classic of all time. Yes, I have seen the trailer for the new movie, which I don't think is supposed to be a retelling of Wuthering Heights, guys, especially with those quotation marks there. I think it is somehow tied to Wuthering Heights, but I don't think it is intentionally going to be a retelling. Like, I don't think that's what it's trying to do, and so I am so excited for the Saltburnification of Wuthering Heights. Like, sign me up. I was gonna say front row at the cinema. That's a terrible place to sit, so hopefully I'll be somewhere in the middle of the crowd, but I want to be there on Valentine's Day, and that has once again reignited my interest to read Jane Eyre. Now, to be transparent, I have no idea what this is about. I think it's like a Gothic romance. I think it's like the OG hate to love story, and after really loving The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig recently, which has a very dramatic dialogue style when it comes to the romance within that book, I have just been itching to pick up a classic, and I know the Brontes have never let me down. This one has been, well, to be fair, I never really have a drive to read classics. This is the only one that ever sparks a fire in me, and I really want to get to it. I just feel like I need to be quite disciplined with it, because with it being a classic, like, I know it's going to take me a little longer. So maybe I should do a chapter a day. 38 chapters, so that would take me about a month. Maybe I should actually make myself do that, because I don't really foresee myself picking this up as like a casual little read that I'm just going to burn through. I feel like this is something that I'm going to have a little bit of discipline with. I recently went to an R.F. Kuang sign-in for Catabasis, and I picked up Yellowface because I have the Fairy Loot edition of Catabasis, so I didn't have it with me to be signed, but I wanted something to take to the table, obviously, to meet R.F. Kuang, so I picked up a copy of Yellowface. I have, up until this point, been very 50-50 with R.F. Kuang. I do not like the Poppy War, but I do really like Babel, and so I now have the other two books that I've yet to try from R.F. Kuang to see if we can cement whether she is an author for me. So I do also want to read Catabasis this season, but I think because I've just picked this up, I am really enthusiastic about giving it a try. I've heard that the audiobook is really good for this, so I definitely also want to go down that route. And this one, I think, is about a woman. I think an Asian woman dies, and her friend steals her manuscript and publishes it under her name. That is definitely the way that it goes. And I think it's a satire, but also deals a lot with things like cultural appropriation. So I'm really interested to see how R.F. Kuang does deal with those themes in this book, because my one criticism of Babel is that the messaging is very heavy-handed and it doesn't need to be. There is a beautiful subtlety about Babel that I feel like could have carried through the entire book, but it's constantly reinforced by this like heavy-handed like hammering in of the underlying messages of Babel, which I feel really destroys the beauty of Babel in some ways. So I'm excited to see. I know this is a very different genre, very different tone, but I'm interested to kind of see what the balance is in this one. This is one that I am also hoping will fall into a very similar niche to human rights, like the contemporary setting with the occult magic. And this is also a book in the stacks that I am trying my hardest to get to this month. Every time I need to pick a new book for the stacks, I'm double checking to see whether I can read this book next. I'm so desperate to get to it, and that is All the Devils by Caitlin Wilson. This one I'm pretty sure is a young adult to dark academia, vaguely witchy fantastical story. I don't know what the balance of magic is in here, but I do think it falls into like the dark academia fantasy category. This one is following a girl who whose sister has died, but when she goes to the funeral, she finds out that the body in the casket is not her sister's. So she enrolls at this elite boarding school, like it's a private academy that her sister was attending, to try and figure out what happened to her. But she actually stumbles across this community of secret societies, ancient magic, and demons. Sign me up, say less. Honestly, like I didn't need all of that to want to read this book, but honestly, like I'm telling you, it's eyeballing me from the stacks. If I don't get to this in September, I'm going to be so upset. I'm trying my best. At some point in the season, I really would love to read a generic thriller. I don't really care which generic thriller it is. I have quite a few. My stash of generic thrillers actually brings me so much joy because whenever I need one, there's just one there. Don't really care what it's about, but I have one when I need it. So I've put a placeholder in, I think, from one of the most popular authors that I currently own and have not read from, and that is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. So from what I remember of this one, it is about a woman who goes to Paris to stay with her brother, but when she gets there, she finds out that her brother isn't there. So she starts to try and figure out what happened to her brother, like where he's gone, when it becomes an alarmingly long amount of time that he hasn't come back to his apartment. And the neighbors are behaving a little oddly. It does say that this is a locked room mystery. I'm not a fan of like mysteries, the murder mystery or cozy mystery genre specifically. I like the books to have a little bit more of an edge. I'm not sure where on that spectrum Lucy Foley falls, but I'm interested in giving it a try. I love me a good thriller. Another book of the month book is The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas. I think that this one is a Gothic horror. It says that it's like Mexican Gothic meets Rebecca. Now, I was really excited for Mexican Gothic and I sadly did not enjoy it too much. It has like a subcategory of horror in there that I didn't know was going to be in there going into it, and it's one that really gives me the ick, which I mean, horror is supposed to some degree, but that subgenre is never one that I would intentionally reach for because it really makes me feel a kind of way. But I'm hoping that The Hacienda will give me what I wanted from Mexican Gothic that I ultimately didn't get, because it's Mexican Gothic meets Rebecca, and Rebecca is my second favorite classic after Wuthering Heights. I love me the Gothics. So this one is about a woman, I think it's set in Mexico, and she marries a man, a very handsome man. She does this knowing that there is some mystery surrounding his ex-wife's disappearance, or his first wife's disappearance, because I don't think that they divorced or separated. I think she just disappeared while they were married. And she moves into his house where she starts to have these really pervasive dreams that she can't shake, and she just feels like there's something terribly wrong with the house. And I'm excited to figure out what it is. I really want to rewatch actually the old black and white Rebecca sometime soon because I love that movie. Also perfect for the season. Read Rebecca, guys. A couple of months ago now, I posted a video on my channel called Reread and Resume, and that was 10 series where I'd read the first book in the series and I'd really enjoyed them, but for whatever reason over the years I had never continued. So at this point I now want to go back and reread book one so I can carry on and finish the series, and I'm hoping to tackle all of these series back to back with one book per month until I just get through the entire list. It's going to take a while, I know, but I'm currently tackling the Licanius trilogy by James Islington, and when I'm done with that, because we're currently in the autumn season, I would love to pick up One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig and reread this one so that I can read the sequel, which I think is Two Twisted Crowns. Once again, I recently read The Night and the Moth, gave it 5 stars, absolutely loved it. I gave One Dark Window 4 stars the first time I read it, also really enjoyed it, especially Rachel Gillig's really atmospheric writing style. And this book is set in this kind of spooky fog-covered wood where the characters are trying to get rid of the Shepherd King, and they are collecting this deck of magical cards to be able to do so. So this is almost a blend of the Gothic romance, Gothic fantasy that I really enjoy, and also that contemporary setting with a touch of the occult, because this isn't a contemporary setting. It is a fantastical world, it's high fantasy, but the magic in here are they called Providence or Provenance cards? I don't think it says within the synopsis, but essentially they have cards and each card gives the bearer a magical ability, but it also comes with a consequence, and our main character is dealing with a consequence, which is a monster that lives in her head and is slowly taking her over. So it has almost like a tarot kind of magic system, but with a twist in this really spooky woods covered high fantasy world. And I'm also excited to give this another go. I mean, I gave it 4 stars. still loved it. But off the back of The Night and the Moth, which was a new favorite but also a slow burn for me, didn't realize it was going to be a new favorite until I got like halfway through and I was like, I'm obsessed with this. I'm interested to see if any of that kind of affects my opinion when I reread One Dark Window. A series that is very different tonally, so I feel could lean a little bit more towards the summer, but for some reason still feels very autumnal to me, is the Undertaking of Heart and Mercy series by Megan Bannon. I think somebody said in my comments that they've been calling this the Tanria series because that's the name of the world that this is set in, because I think on Goodreads it is listed as like the Undertaking of Heart and Mercy, but it is a series of standalones, not like a continuation of the same story. So whatever it's called, this is book 2 in the series, and these are fantasy romance rom-coms that are heavy on the romance, and I don't want to say they're light on the fantasy, but don't go into this expecting stellar world building, because the world provides a quirky backdrop to the romance, if anything else, which took me a little minute to adjust to, but I eventually fell in love with the Undertaking of Heart and Mercy. Each of these books follows a different couple, and it's also a retelling of an iconic movie. Now, I'm not sure what book 3 is. This one is When Harry Met Sally. The first one is, I'm pretty sure it's You've Got Mail. In this world, there is this portal that goes to this kind of other dimension where zombies are roaming around. Like I said, don't think too hard about the world in here. But there are a group of people called marshals who essentially police this area and stop the zombies coming out of these portals and terrorizing the general populace. And in the second book in this series, The Undermining of Twyla and Frank, we are following 2 people who are marshals. Now, one of them is a widow and the other one is significantly younger than her, and they have been best friends, I think that they're neighbors, for quite some time, and they team up to join the marshals, and eventually a romance blossoms. So this one is an age gap romance, which isn't typically my favorite, but the one instance I think I've actually read an age gap romance, I actually enjoyed it, which is great. And I just really loved how lighthearted and fun the first book in this series was. My only criticism was that I didn't quite understand the world, but eventually I just really had to let that go. And I'm going into this knowing that I should be letting it go, and maybe this one will be a 5-star for me. And the final book we're going to be talking about today is once again a autumn TBR veteran, and I actually tried to read this one last year, guys, and I just did not have the time to dedicate to this book, the time and the attention that I wanted to dedicate to this book, so I did have to put it down, and that is The Diviners by Libba Bray. This once again kind of fits into that niche of contemporary or real world setting with a fantastical edge. I made it like 150 pages into here, and the issue that I had is that I was trying to listen to the audiobook of this series because I've heard that it's really good, which it is, was really enjoying the audio, but I was solely listening to the audio when I was taking Brie out for a walk, when I was doing other things, and I realized that I needed to immersion read this. Like, I needed to have the physical copy on hand while I was listening to the audio, because I was not necessarily struggling to keep track, but I wasn't paying as much attention as I would like to, and I was enjoying this book too much to continue on in that manner, and maybe not enjoy it as much as I would have if I was immersion reading this or reading it physically. So this one is a very hyped, very well loved young adult fantasy series set in the 1920s, following a girl who moves to New York City. She has some mysterious magical powers, and she is excited to throw herself into 1920s New York. It's the flapper era. She just wants to go out and dance the night away, but there is a string of grisly murders happening across New York City. When the police are coming up empty and they can't figure out what's going on here, Evie takes it upon herself to try and figure out who the murderer is, because it seems like something relating to the occult may be responsible, instead of you're just like, you know, your run-of-the-mill serial killer. So those are the 10 books that I'm very excited to get to this season. I might make a winter TBR. Like I said, I only really tend to do autumnal TBRs, and that's because it's the season that I'm the most enthusiastic about reading, for sure. But I do have a little bit of a taste in winter as well. I like to get into my more intricate, more dense fantasy in winter. I feel like because I have a lot of time, I don't like to go out in winter. It's great when Christmas is over, I'm locked in. I'm not leaving till March. So I like to get into some more dense, like thicker books. So maybe we'll have a winter TBR as well, but let me know which of these you are most excited for me to read. Right now, I'm very excited to get into The Diviners and also Jane Eyre. I really hope that I have time to get to the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. Maybe I'll try and get into the stacks for next month, which will give me a better shot of actually getting to it. I'm very enthusiastic about all of these right now, and And I wish that after filming this video, I was off to go sit down and read so that I could hopefully get to some of these a little bit sooner. But alas, I have a bucket load of editing to do. But down in my comments, let me know which of these you are most excited about. If you would like to let me know that you were here, but you don't feel like you have anything to say, leave me an eye emoji for the diviners. But aside from that, guys, please don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.